Hello class, chapter 2. Today is January 25th. Remember, you also have an online discussion that I will post, and there is a quiz that gets released tonight, and it is due next Wednesday by midnight. Please account for technology problems. Make sure that you get that quiz done and make sure you participate in the online discussion. That was one of the deals in not meeting in class. Okay, so chapter 2 is the offer. Remember, we said that for a valid contract to be formed, it needed three elements: that you needed an offer, there had to be acceptance of that offer, and there had to be some consideration, whether that's payment or some value exchanged or some detriment to another party. Consideration is chapter 3, acceptance is chapter 2. Consideration is chapter 4, acceptance is chapter 3. We're on chapter 2, which is the offer. An offer does not have to be in writing to be enforceable. Remember, contracts don't have to be in writing to be enforceable unless they are required to be in writing under the statute of frauds. So I can make a verbal offer perhaps right now and say I offer to buy your cell phone for $100. Even though it's not in writing, it's still a valid offer as long as the terms are definite and ascertainable and can be enforced. The definition that the book gives for an offer is a manifestation of willingness to enter into a contract. And what we're going to do is we're going to, essentially it's a willingness to be bound by your promise, and we're going to kind of contrast that with a gratuitous promise in advertisements as this video progresses. Couple definitions: the offeror is the person who's making the offer, the offeree is the person who's receiving the offer, the promisor is the person who's promising to perform some act, and the promisee is the individual who is going to receive the benefit of that promise. The offeror is the master of the offer. They control the means of which it can be accepted in the terms of the offer. And the means of acceptance really kind of start to play out a little bit later in the course. And we'll also see that in a couple of cases in this chapter 2. But you can define the means of acceptance any way that you want. And you can say that, let me know if you agree to the contract by, February 1st at 5 p.m. Or you can say, you must respond to this offer and accept via email. Or if you really just want to make it hard on them, you can say, I need you to write the words "I accept" on a napkin with pink pen, and that is mail priority to Alaska. The point being is that you can do it any way that you want, and the acceptance, when defined, must be by the means in which the offer required it. If you leave it open, and then any reasonable means of acceptance will be valid. Again, defining, there's a difference between an offer to enter into a contract, the desire to be bound, versus a gratuitous promise. And we talked a little bit about gratuitous promises last week. If I'm going to make an offer to paint your door and I say, look, I'm going to paint your door next Tuesday at 5 p.m. and when I finish by Wednesday at 9 a.m., you will pay me $100 and I will paint it in navy blue in one door only. Please accept by sending an email to this email address. That is an intent to be bound. If I'm the neighbor and I come over and say, hey, look, your door doesn't look very good today. If I get a chance, I'll come over and I'll paint it sometime. What color do you like? Blue, green, whatever. I'll just figure out what looks good when I get around to it. The second one is a gratuitous promise. There isn't enough in that offer for the court to hold your neighbor bound to paint the door, whereas when I tell you a definitive date, price, color, I define those terms, and all you have to do is accept, then that is an intent to be bound by the contract. So you need to make that distinction between a gratuitous promise, I promise to cook you dinner sometime next week, yeah, I'll bring it over if you're hungry, versus, for $100, I'll bake you a pan of lasagna, which, by the way, if you're willing to pay me $100 for my lasagna, then by all means send an email and accept. One of the major areas, and this is going to be the topic of our online discussion, is advertisements. And you'll see in the chapter the O'Keefe case, which really goes through and defines when an advertisement is an offer versus when an advertisement is an invitation to make an offer. And they're really, if you just drive up US 19 and you look at the billboards, especially the car dealerships, I think down a little bit south, you'll see at one point there was a buy one Kia, get one Kia free, or, $299 down with approved credit, or things of that nature. And what they're doing is they're really just identifying, they're inviting you to come in and engage in further negotiations. And in the O'Keefe case, really talks about that issue where there was a mistake in the advertisement on the price of the vehicle. And what they said is that it was just an invitation to come in and start negotiating the price of the offer. There's one local dealership where if you look online, they'll advertise a car for approximately $6,000-$7,000 than the suggested resale price of a brand new car. And what you see on there when you get in the fine print is that what they've done is they've taken the absolute best price with the perfect credit, with all types of discounts that one could possibly have, military, loyalty, everything like that. And so they give you this price, but you have to meet certain conditions. And so that's not really an offer at that price. What it is it's an invitation for you to go to the dealership, see how many of those that you can meet, and then they set the price then. Now, if there is an offer, for example, if there's jewelry or something like that, and they advertise for $100, you buy this diamond necklace, $100 out the door, offer good through February 4th. That doesn't leave anything for them to negotiate if the advertisement doesn't have any other language in it, where all you have to do is just go in and pay them the $100 and you get your jewelry. So you really reading those advertisements and understanding whether it's just an invitation versus an actual offer makes a big difference. McDonald's 2 for $3 on the certain sandwiches, that's an offer. All you have to do is go, it's a unilateral contract, you go in and accept it. So really look out for those advertisements. That's going to be our online discussion. I'm going to actually ask you guys on that online discussion to go through either Craigslist or a newspaper or an online paper, and I want you to try and find an advertisement where it doesn't look like there's anything else left to negotiate, and that advertisement constitutes a valid offer. Most advertisements, and the general rule is that an advertisement is an invitation to deal only, and in and of itself does not constitute an offer. Very important, and this is probably on the quiz for in a few weeks, not tonight's, because tonight's is only on chapter 1, is that for a common law contract, remember that's a non-uniform commercial code contract, the terms of the offer must be definite, certain, and identifiable. You're looking at quantity, price, time for performance, those types of things. So anything other than that is either a gratuitous promise, an invitation offer, or a non-enforceable offer. Now, there is a really neat component of contract law where you can have an offer that's irrevocable, otherwise known as an options contract. And what an option is an option keeps the contract open. Where you see this most of the time is on a lease option for a house, where you pay $500 a month in lease term, and then you add an additional, I'm using easy numbers, $100 you pay him additional $100, so a total of $600, and that $100 is to keep an option open to purchase the property at some identifiable time in the future. The other place where you see this quite a bit in its most elementary approach is at garage sales, where you'll have people come and you're selling a bike or a motorcycle or something. They say, hey, look, I need to talk to my wife, or I need to talk to my husband before I buy this. If I give you $10, will you hold it through the end of the day? If you accept that $10, you have now left the option. You have created an irrevocable offer and an option contract. So if you're selling a motorcycle for $1,000 and they say, I need to go talk to my wife, if I give you $10, will you hold this open for another 4 hours? You accept that $10. You can't then sell that motorcycle to somebody else while that option contract is open. Now, What happens if they don't come back? You get to keep the $10. What happens if they do come back? Do you take the $10 off? Well, I don't know. That's kind of, you would have to negotiate that. You can do it either way, but that is an option contract. And you see, like I said, you see it in real estate. Sometimes you can see it in used car dealerships, but garage sales is quite frankly where I've seen it the most. The offer itself just can't be revoked. It doesn't mean that the other side is accepting your offer. It's a second offer. It's a second negotiation. That options contract to hold the motorcycle for 4 hours for that $10 is in and of itself an offer and acceptance and consideration, which then prevents the offer or the person who's selling the motorcycle from selling it. So keep that in mind. Most likely going to be on the quiz. You're going to want to need to know that. For termination of an offer, the offeror, if it hasn't been accepted, and we're going to talk about acceptance next week, but if it hasn't been accepted, the offeror again controls the offer. They can revoke that offer at any time. The offer can expire on its own terms, or if the offeree rejects the offer or makes a counter offer that is different in any of the terms, then that initial offer is dead. So those are the three main ways that an offer can be terminated. Is the offeror terminates it, it expires on its terms, it has to be accepted by February 4th at 5 p.m. It's now 5:01. Or the offeree says, well, rather than $1,000 for the motorcycle, I'll give you $900. That constitutes a termination of that offer. The interesting component of that is that if, for example, you do offer to sell a motorcycle to somebody for $1,000 and they say, well, no, I think that might be too much. How about 900? Your original offer is off the table. So if you say no, they can't then go back and say, all right, well, I accept your original $1,000 offer. That $1,000 offer is dead. So you're not bound to abide by it. Okay. If there are mistakes in the offer, it depends on whether those are material or immaterial mistakes. A material mistake will render that offer unenforceable. An immaterial mistake will not. Tough to come up with examples on that, but material. If you advertise a motorcycle for $100 and you meant $1,000, that's material. If you say that it must be picked up by Monday, June 2nd, but in fact June 2nd is a Sunday, that is an immaterial component of that offer. Under the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, in order to keep business transactions moving, the offer and acceptance is much less stringent. The offer just has to have just enough terms to make it identifiable, and in fact the Uniform Commercial Code, when read through its entirety, has its own gap fillers for those terms that are not in there. So where a common law has to be ascertainable, has to be definite, and it has to be certain, under UCC between merchants doesn't have to be that way, just as long as there's enough. And you can also look at the course of dealings between the two companies. If these two companies have been doing business for 4 years, if the offer is ambiguous but it's consistent with how they've been doing business, the courts will still enforce it. Now, the last component that I want to talk about is the first capital case in there, and it's a really interesting case, and it has to deal with offer and acceptance, and it has to deal with mistake. What essentially happens is that there's a company and it has a life insurance policy on its CEO, and they're paying for, in case they lose the CEO to cancer or whatever ailment, the company then has a life insurance policy where it will get paid essentially so that because it's losing an incredibly valuable asset. And so if the CEO ends up with cancer or something of that nature or passes away, then the company gets that money, presumably because they're going to cover lost profits by missing that key player. In that particular case, my dates may be off, I have to read it, but the company failed to renew its life insurance policy, and I believe it was in January, and the insurance company kept sending them letters saying, hey, if you don't pay this $1,000 deductible, you're going to lose coverage. And in fact, that's what happened. It lapsed. They didn't pay it, and then lo and behold, that key CEO ended up getting lung cancer, and for whatever reason, in a perfect turmoil, which makes it a great case, is that for one reason or another, the insurance company then sent another letter over the summer that said, hey, for you to keep your life insurance, you have to pay $1,000. And well, now that they know that the CEO has cancer, of course they go and they want to pay it, because they believe that what happened is that even though the insurance policy had lapsed, they tried to construe that next letter as a new offer, which they said that they accepted. And what the court ultimately says is, no, you knew that it expired. You knew that it expired on your terms. That summer letter that came out, you knew was a mistake, and it was a material mistake, therefore rendering the offer unenforceable. So that is the law of offer. I know this was about 16 minutes, a little bit on the long side. Again, you can email me at jts@simonslawfirm.com. Chapter 1 quizzes tonight in the discussion. Thank you.